New recording. Nice. So last time we had found that Abigail was let go from her position due to her pregnancy. Despite Abigail's best efforts, the darkened stain still remained in the ruby red carpet. It had been impossible to shift. The smell of chamomile still permeated the air in the West Wing hall, albeit faintly. But Abigail herself was gone. Letitia's hands trembled as she handed Genevieve her cup. Genevieve noticed this. She had uncommonly keen eyes, and she said, "What's wrong, Letty? You don't seem quite yourself." "I'm afraid that's how most of our conversations have begun as of late." Letitia smiled, a thin, self-abasing smile, and shook her head. "I apologize, Genevieve. I know I've been a poor excuse for a teacher today. I've just been distracted, you see." "I can tell." Genevieve blew upon the surface of her chamomile tea, her lips pursed. Then she brought the rim of the cup to her lips. She took a few delicate sips, her white throat convulsing, before she set the cup back down on its saucer. Then she looked at Letitia with curious eyes. "This is about Abigail, isn't it?" "You knew already?" "Of course I knew. I don't think there's a single soul in the house who doesn't, despite Rowena's best attempts to keep things hush-hush." Genevieve laughed. She should know by now that it's impossible to keep secrets here. The servants all talk too much. "Impossible, is it?" Letitia contemplated this, all the while nursing her own cup of tea. She wasn't sure if she liked that idea. She'd always been one to take refuge in her own head, and she hated the thought of her private thoughts being unearthed for the perusal of all. What if word was to get out that her mother was not sick as she had stated? Neither did Letitia want Genevieve to learn of Clara. She did not want anybody to. Her memories of her past mistress were hers alone, sinful yet sweet. Clara's memory, however, grew fainter and fainter with every day that passed. Dinah said as much when she brought her breakfast. "Sounds as though everybody's been talking." "There's nothing else to do here but talk, so—" Genevieve crossed her legs. "Dinah was the one who told you, then?" "Yes, that's right. She said, all sorts of things. I'm not sure what to think." "Perhaps it's best not to think about it at all. There's nothing you can do. Abigail is already gone." "Yes, I suppose that is true." Genevieve hung her head. A silence descended upon the pair, which was broken only by the clicking of the clock upon the wall. Genevieve took another sip of her tea. Then she sighed. "Well, I say that, but I'm being something of a hypocrite. I feel sorry for Abigail, too." "You do?" She was a nice woman. She didn't deserve all of this. I really do wish I hadn't shouted at her back then." "Genevieve." Letitia's eyes softened. All of a sudden she was hit with a rush of affection for the young woman that was so strong. She had to dip her head to hide it. Genevieve's foul temper had unnerved her. It was true, but since that day she had done all she could to make amends. Truly, she had been trying her best. "It should be all right. I don't think Abigail holds any great grudge against you." "Are you sure?" "I'd like to think so. You did apologize after all. What more could you do?" "What more indeed?" Genevieve looked down at her lunch. The slice of meat pie which rested upon her plate was small, but the pastry was a flaky gold, the chicken livers within still piping hot from the oven. Genevieve lifted her fork. She broke a piece of pastry off with its tines, then brought it to her lips. Taking this as an invitation, Letitia began to eat too. Letitia's own fork scraped across her plate. Her jaw worked up and down, and the rich taste of organ meat filled her mouth. The cook's meals were truly delicious. Letitia had thought she would miss the food of the Mortimers' home, but she had not. It was strange, really, how quickly she had adjusted to her new life. Things had changed, yes, but not necessarily for the worst. For that, at least, she was grateful. She cared for Genevieve's company, and she did not want to see her so forlorn. That was why, after she had eaten her pie, Letitia set her fork aside and said, "Would you like to go for another walk in the moors, Genevieve?" "Oh? Would you really allow that?" "Yes, really. It's been a while since we last went out. I thought it might make for a nice change of pace. It should help take your mind off things at the very least." "Oh, Letty." Genevieve's eyes, which had once been dull, lit up like twin lanterns. "I think I would like that. I would like it very much." "Good. We can bring the charcoal too if you'd like, and some drawing paper, of course. Sketching might cheer you up." "I'm not so sure about that." Genevieve wrinkled her nose. "I'm not very good at drawing. That's probably for the best. This way at least it means I still have something to teach you." "Oh yes, I suppose you have a point. I wouldn't like to get too proficient in any particular quarter. Then I fear I'd put you out of a job." Perish the thought. Perish the thought indeed. Abigail might be gone, but you're still here. I was horrible to her, but I think I'd hate myself if I was horrid to you too. Genevieve reached out, taking Letitia's hands in her own. Ugh, itchy eye. Their fingers twined together much like the ivy which shrouded the walls and windows of Hatton Manor, as she offered Letitia a shy smile. "You've been nicer to me than I deserved, and much more patient too. You really are the best governess I could have hoped for." "Aren't they cute? Surely nothing bad will happen." Their midday meal consumed, Letitia and Genevieve set out on the moors. The sky was festooned with grey clouds, but they parted during their walk, thus allowing the sunlight to shimmer through. Now, said sunlight was beating warmly against the nape of Letitia's neck. The light helped cheer her spirits, as did the continued pitter-patter of Genevieve's gentle, girlish voice. Genevieve was in her element. She seemed much more alive among the sprawling moors than she had in her classroom. Those 4 wooden walls were too small and cramped, unable to contain her youthful zeal. Now it was bubbling forth from her like a fountain. Genevieve neatly skirted and sidestepped the shallow lakes and puddles, fearlessly undaunted by the writhing eels that had lurked among them. She kept up a cheerful stream of conversation with each step she took, mostly about her childhood, and the time she'd spent in the moors, and the mice and voles and snakes that lived among the grass. "Once, when I was little, I tried to bring a mouse home as a pet. It had a broken leg, and so I wanted to nurse it back to health. I told myself I was being a good Samaritan, but Miss Porter found it in my pocket and made such a fuss." "And? What happened then?" Lilting though Genevieve's tone was, Letitia couldn't imagine this tale had a happy ending, not for the young Genevieve of a decade prior, nor for the mouse. "She said mice were filthy vermin, and I wasn't to bring them into the house. She picked my poor mouse up by its tail, and then she threw it into the kitchen fireplace." "Oh my God. That's quite aggressive." "God. What?" Letitia gasped, aghast. "She didn't really do that, did she?" "Yes, she did, right in front of my face. I begged and pleaded, but she wouldn't listen. My poor mouse was burnt to a crisp." "Oh my, how awful." "It was beastly of her, wasn't it? I was so angry I stomped my feet and cried out, and this Miss Porter turned on me. I was afraid she was going to throw me in the fire next, like a wicked witch." Letitia shook her head. The poor mouse. Well, its leg was broken. My mother consoled me afterwards. She said a quick death was probably the kindest end for it, but I so wished I could have kept it as a pet. "Ah?" "Slackers redeemed give Hene a treat. Hang on. I must do my bidding." I must feed the queen. I will be right back, chat. I'm back. We gave her the chicken flavoured greenies today. Good for her teeth. Gotta put a jumper on. It's been getting chillier, chat. Summer is officially behind us over here. I must take my headset off while I put my jumper on. We can have yours. I don't want it either. I'm happy. I'm thriving in the cold. I was never made for island life. I have too much of the Irish in me. I am made for the moors, just like Genevieve. Let me have a quick drink. That's true as a thaw. We don't really get autumn and spring over here. Well, that sucks, Slacko, but like, I also don't want to do that. That was a very long time ago, though. Genevieve peeped at Letitia from beneath her eyelashes, smiling. Now why do you look so very disheartened? It wasn't your mouse which was thrown into the fireplace. I know that, but if I had been in your shoes, I don't think I could have handled it. You were a sensitive child, I take it? I fear I'm still sensitive even now. Ah, yes, you did turn an interesting shade of puce when I spoke of crushing that eel, and that was an ugly, slippery thing. This was true enough. Genevieve's casual murder of the eel had shocked Letitia when first she'd heard of it. But was bashing in an eel's head any worse than flinging a limp mouse onto the burning hearth? But you're the one suffering, Slacko? I understand. But you see, I am excited when I am also not suffering. The complexities of individuality. Of all of God's creations, eels were some of the least sympathetic. Now, I find eels quite charming. I think Letitia is just so rude. Oh, welcome in, Steve-O. Yes, it's a beautiful game. Eels are lovely. I think Letitia is just judgmental. She's one of those people who is very sensitive and so gets really mean about certain things. You know, people who are very, very sensitive about the world, and so they become quite rude when anything doesn't fit into their worldview. I think she's one of those sorts, you know. They were truly unpleasant, almost monstrous, with their rows upon rows of sharp teeth. Field mice, meanwhile, were significantly more pleasing to the eye. Now that I have to disagree with. Mice are pests. Mice are pests. They destroy my country's local ecosystem quite harshly. Now eels. We have native eels, so I like them. You see the dynamics that are playing in my brain. Mice are only cute if they're like pet mice. Like I've got them from a pet shop and they're like clean and everything, and they've never been out of the house, you know. Eels do have silly faces. They're lovely. Their twitchy noses were akin to rabbits. And their curled paws were rather cute. Oh, are they worse for people's health than rats? I didn't know that. How curious. Sacco, you say this. I wish you to send me 300 articles on this fact. A joke. Only send me 3. Letita herself had owned a book by Dorothy Kilner when she was younger, which she had documented the adventures of a mouse called Nimble. You see? She's biased! Disgusting. Letita had thought Nimble's escapades through the gamekeeper's cottage and Mrs. Artless's attic a great deal of fun. She now feared, however, that if Nimble had dared venture into Hatton Manor, she would soon have been immolated. Well, yes, especially if she was in the kitchen. That's dirty. You should not have mice, any rodents in the kitchen. Even if they are pets. I find that allowing animals access to the cooking space is a bad idea. Just a safety thing, you know. Letita told Genevieve about Nimble's adventures, and she laughed. Oh, that does sound adorable. It's no wonder you looked so shocked, my poor dear Letty. Though Genevieve's voice was light enough, something about her words stuck like a burr in Letita's subconscious. She had noticed this for a while now, but perhaps it would be prudent to comment on it, lest things get out of hand. You persist in calling me Letty, Genevieve. Should I not call you that? Not really, no. Miss Reed would be much more appropriate. Miss Reed! Genevieve scoffed. That sounds so stuffy. You're not that much older than me. It seems strange calling you something so proper. Are you suggesting that I'm not proper? No, I didn't mean that. It's more... Well, I don't know if I can see you as my governess anymore, not after you've been so nice to me. You're kind and gentle and forgiving, just like my own mother. Genevieve smiled bashfully. But you're not so very much like her, I suppose. You're too young for starters, and in any case, I don't think anybody could replace her. I wouldn't want to replace her. I know that. That's why I like you so much. You're understanding but not overbearing, and you're nicer to me than I really deserve. That's why I'd rather call you Letty. It makes you sound more like my equal. I would never cling to Miss Reed's chest and cry, but with Letty... Maybe I wouldn't mind too awfully if I opened up to her. I meant what I said, you know. I really do consider you my friend. Oh, Genevieve. Don't worry, Steve-o. Genevieve doesn't have to try very hard with Letty, because Letty is a fucking wet blanket. Jenny, then. Letita had tried to avoid using this nickname, simpler though it was to say than Genevieve's fancier French name. I like Genevieve. I think Genevieve is a beautiful name. I know it'd be quite difficult to have the name Genevieve in this modern day, but I think it's beautiful. Doubtless a gift from her Belgian mother. She hadn't wanted to risk getting too close to her pupil if she could avoid it. It seemed too late now, however, to worry about such affairs. Oh, Letty, the walls you tried to put up were made of papier-mâché. Genevieve was right. Letty had already held her close and consoled her. The memory of Genevieve's warmth was impressed upon her body like a brand, alongside the dampness of her tears. During their turn about their moors, their relationship had gone through a definite change. They were not the same people they once had been. Not to each other. Letty had known Genevieve for a little more than a month, and yet... Is that no good, Letty? Genevieve looked at her governess, unusually shy. Do you not want to be my friend? Oh, no! That isn't it at all. Yes, like I will find you more lesbians, don't worry. I'm busy right now. Oh, Steve-o, Letty's never going to stand up for herself. She has no backbone. She has nothing. She has no bones, if anything. Oh no, that isn't it at all. Letitia is still worried about her status as a governess and whether she was acting with enough propriety. But she didn't want to hold Genevieve at arm's length over such petty concern. She was afraid if she drew back now she would only hurt her. She would hurt herself too, for Genevieve, Letitia realized with a start, had fast become irreplaceable. Jenny? Letitia cleared her throat, her cheeks turned pink. Goodness, it feels strange calling you that. You don't need to force yourself if you truly don't want to. But I like it. It makes me feel like we really are friends. We shouldn't be, though. By all rights, I ought to instruct, nay, order, you to address me with the respect I'm owed. I know you should, but you won't. And how do you know that? You're too nice, silly. Genevieve laughed, her voice carried across the vast empty moors like a fluttering butterfly. I'm glad of it too. I've been frightfully lonely in Hatton this last year, ever since Mother died, in fact. Do you miss her a good deal? Every single day. She isn't the only one I miss, though. Genevieve came to a halt by one of the scrubby lakes. She looked out at the water, her expression contemplative. A few moments passed. Each second felt longer and more unwieldy than the last. Letitia wondered if perhaps Genevieve was reconsidering what she wished to say. Perhaps this talk of her family was far too personal after all. But then Genevieve inhaled, her lips parted as though meaning to sink her teeth into an apple. She turned her head, and when she did so, Letitia felt herself shiver. She had never before seen Genevieve look more earnest. I feel sorry that Abigail had to leave, but her departure wasn't entirely unexpected. I wasn't all that close to her, so I'm not too sad, but it turned my mind to more melancholy musings. Such as? This might sound melodramatic, but... Genevieve looked out across the moors, her eyes half hidden beneath a sweep of red lashes which seemed to burn. I feel like I've always been saying goodbye to people in some manner or another. Servants come and go, and I hardly ever see Father, and then Mother passed last year. What do you mean, stream hiccups? What do you mean? It says I'm still going. Don't scare me like that, Psycho. It says it's still working. It's unstable, but it says it's still working. Mean to me. Okay, great. Genevieve drew in a breath. She winced. And then before her, there was Gareth, my little brother. I won't lie, it is raining a lot lately, which will be affecting my connection. Oh, I see. Letitia, of course, was already aware of this. She had seen young Gareth already, not in flesh, but on a canvas, preserved forever. The boy had sported wispy golden locks and blue eyes. Pardon me. Perched upon his mother's lap, chubby fingers twined with hers, he had been the spitting image of his father. The image of Gareth had haunted Letitia ever since she had first laid eyes upon it. She had wondered about him almost incessantly, yet she had never had a chance to bring the subject up with Genevieve. Thank you for the bless yous. Thank you. She thought it best perhaps to let sleeping dogs lie. She hadn't wanted to upset her. Surely it was fine to speak of him now, though, given Genevieve had been the one to broach the subject. Curiosity burned inside Letitia's breast like wildfire. If she ever wanted to understand Genevieve, it seemed imperative that she know more about her past. What had happened to Gareth? Letty? Genevieve raised a brow. She did not seem particularly taken back by Letitia's lack of a reaction, just mildly curious. You don't sound very surprised. Had you heard about Gareth already? I had, yes. Well, I suppose that's to be expected. The servants are always talking about things they shouldn't. The more sensitive, the better. Gives them a thrill, I think. There are no theatres around here, but even so, they're still addicted to dramatics. Genevieve pulled a face. So, who told you about my baby brother? Was it Dinah? No, it wasn't. I saw him, Gareth I mean, in a painting in your father's study. I wondered who he was, and your father told me. So it was father, was it? Genevieve pressed her lips together. It's a surprise. He doesn't like talking about Gareth, not that I blame him. Here, Genevieve sighed. Gareth was a sweet boy, a spitting image of father. Mother simply adored him. I adored him too. I was so happy to have a younger brother to play with, but... Another silence opened up between Letitia and Genevieve. It grew bigger and more consuming as the seconds passed, vicious and hungry, like a starving eel. Letitia shifted from foot to foot. All this talk about poor little Gareth was discomforting, to say the very least. Now, Letitia knew a little boy called Gareth had once lived in Hatton. She could not pretend he had never existed. That would have been too cruel. I presume he died at a young age, then. You would be correct in your presumption, yes? Gareth was only 3 years old. Mother always called him her little baby. And he never had a chance to become much more than that. Oh, I really am sorry. Don't apologize. This happened a long time ago. I was still a little girl myself. I was only 10 years old. Genevieve's voice was offhand, but Letitia could hear the hurt in it. While she had relayed the story of her mouse with relative amusement, this must have cut far, far deeper. Gareth had been Genevieve's little brother. She must have loved him, doted upon him even, and then... I hope you don't mind me asking, but how did he die? Was it a sickness? A sickness? Genevieve's voice hardened. For some reason Letitia could not fathom. No, that wasn't it. His death was much worse than that. Worse? Yes, he was perfectly healthy, you know, before it happened. There was no reason for him to pass as he did, none at all. Though it was an accident, I cannot help but wonder. Genevieve's expression twisted. I was there with him and I could have saved him. I should have saved him, but... Genevieve exhaled, then lifted her head to meet Letitia's concerned gaze. I took Gareth for a walk in the moors. He used to love going out with me. I told him stories and we'd eat wild garlic and we'd walk together hand in hand. Since I was with Gareth, as Gareth's big sister, it was my job to look out for him. I should have been more careful, but... Letitia felt she knew in what grisly direction this narrative was heading, yet continued to listen, spellbound. Letitia could not take her eyes off Genevieve when next she spoke, her voice unusually quiet and constrained. I glanced away from him for 1 second and then he was gone, off like a shot. You wouldn't think he could run so fast with his tiny little legs, but he surprised me. I underestimated him. I looked and then... Genevieve winced. When I did find him, he was lying face down in one of the lakes. He wasn't moving. Ah! A sharp breath squeezed its way from Letitia's lips. All of a sudden she felt faint. So little Gareth Langley had not died of natural causes as she had expected. His death had been an accident, and a horrible one at that. He had drowned. Just like St. Osbald's older brother, the marshes had swallowed him. I wanted to wade in after Gareth, but I couldn't swim. I was afraid I'd slip and go under myself. It had been raining a few weeks ago. The lakes were a lot deeper than usual. It wasn't safe. I ran all the way back to the house, and the whole time my heart was pounding. I thought maybe one of the adults could save him, the gardener maybe. He'd always been soft on me. I asked him to come and help, but then, when we got back... Genevieve's voice trailed off. She bit her lip, her face devoid of colour, a perfectly white alabaster mask. That was... a long time ago. I still think about it sometimes. It's hard to forget, really, when the villagers loved chuntering about it so. Oh, chuntering! That's a new word for me! Chuntering! I imagine it's like gossip. Let's look it up. Gossiping, chantering. I imagine they're very similar. Oh, that's a very good word. Hang on. We've got to confirm. Talk or grumble monotonously. Ah! So it's gossiping in a way that is just so blasé and monotonous. I see. That's even worse. That's a great word though. What a word. It isn't so bad now, of course, as it was then. At this point my brother's death is old hat, but it was particularly bad during the funeral. Nobody seemed to care that my brother had died. They cared only about how he had died. To them his passing was nothing more than a story they could tell over drinks in the local pub. A tragic stage play. Genevieve grit her teeth together so hard. This enamel seemed at risk of splintering. I've never forgiven them for that. I will never forgive them for that. The men and women in Beaston are all monsters, even worse than the eels. Well, they can all rot in hell for all I care. My brother's death was not an amusing distraction. It most certainly wasn't entertaining. I loved him. I loved him a lot, and then he died, and I should have helped him. I could have, but I took my eyes off him. I didn't mean to. I never wanted to hurt him. It was all an accident. It was a mistake. I told myself that, but it didn't make me feel better. It didn't bring my brother back. After that, my mother got so withdrawn. She stopped laughing, and she didn't play the piano with me nearly as much. She became grey and sad and old. And then she died too. Now I'm all alone. I'm stuck in a house with a hermit of a father, a housekeeper who hates me, and servants who gossip behind my back. I swear some of them think I killed my brother on purpose. I was so lonely for such a long time. Genevieve paused in her narrative. Her eyes met Letitia's, one hand upon her breast as she said, "But it's all right. I have you now. You'll be my friend, won't you, Letty? You don't hate me for what I did, do you?" Let's have a drink of water. That was passionate. I got into that a bit much. Oh. Letitia felt her heart twist inside her breast. She sighed out in sympathy for Genevieve, who had been much more put upon than she had ever known. When she had first come to Ashton, she had been wholly ignorant of Gareth's fate and the part Genevieve had played in it. She had not known then, but now she did. Genevieve had entrusted herself to her in a manner even more intimate than any physical embrace. Genevieve had shared her past with Letitia, painful though it may have been. Now Letitia felt implored, honour-bound even, to reply in turn. She could not bear to let poor Genevieve suffer any further. "Of course I'll be your friend. I don't want you to be lonely, Jenny. I don't blame you for what happened to your brother, not one bit. If anyone does, then they're idiotic, ignorant, and wicked with it." Oh, that's a funny sentence. If anyone does, then they're idiotic. Idiotic and ignorant and wicked with it. I don't usually see people doing sentences like that, but I like it. It's just a bit of a trip up to read because of the... goes to a new line, you know? I know you're not a bad girl. You're kind and good, and I have every faith in you. Even though I bashed an eel's brains in with a rock. Oh, Genevieve. Genevieve, that's a winning. That's very fun. As long as you eat the eel, that's okay. Even so, you might have performed wicked deeds in your time, but so have we all. I wouldn't want to throw stones in glass houses. You have a short temper, yes, but murder? You would never. That's preposterous. Only a fool would think that. Well, I have always thought the villagers of Beaston to be simple-minded. It must be fumes from the swamp. Genevieve giggled at this. Her laughter was muted, just like the dreary sunshine, but it was better than the abject despair which had hitherto shown on her face. Finally, she looked more akin to the Genevieve Letitia had grown accustomed to. She was Jenny again. the swirling mire of her miserable past notwithstanding. And now Letitia was privy to the truth. She wished to cling to him more ardently than she ever had before. She did not think she could ever bear to let Genevieve go. Oh dear. That's not a good thing to think. You need to be okay with letting people go sometimes. That's concerning. That passion can be concerning, babes. Letitia lay beneath her covers that night, staring up at her ceiling with sightless eyes. Her curtains were drawn, and it was pitch black outside. The darkness was so complete it made no difference whether Letitia's eyes were open or shut. She felt blinded either way. It was quiet inside the manor, save for the irregular scraping sound emitting from the rafters. Letitia couldn't see what was causing this ruckus. She couldn't see a foot in front of her face, but her mind was over-eager and it conjured a troop of phantasmal rats up for her. In her mind's eye, these rats had wicked eyes and scrabbling claws. They click-clacked their way through the gap between Letitia's ceiling and the floor above, searching for scraps. From beyond Letitia's window she could hear the wind sighing. It was soft and almost gentle, like the plaintive cries of a child. Oh, you gotta head out, Stevo? That's okay. I'll have a good rest of the stream. You have a good day. And don't forget, chat, you can watch the VODs up on YouTube later. Was that how Gareth had sounded once, when he had still been alive? Ever since her conversation with Genevieve in the moors, Letitia had been able to think of little else. Images of Gareth as he must have been in life flitted through her head, wending between the parade of imaginary rats. Oh! Gareth had only been 3 years old when he had died. He'd barely begun to live before his existence had been snuffed out. This, of course, was nothing new. Children, babies rather, younger than Gareth, died every year in London alone, often before they'd had a chance to draw a single breath. Death didn't discriminate. It came for the rich and poor alike. Nobody was immune from it. Gareth might have been born to wealthy parents, but he had not been so very special, not in that regard. Letitia herself had never met Gareth. She had no reason to feel melancholic about his passing. But it was hard not to, after hearing how he had passed. He hadn't been carried away by an illness. His life had instead been choked out of him slowly and cruelly, as he lay face down in a pool of muddy water. It had been the kind of death which could have been prevented. If only Genevieve had kept a closer eye on him, then maybe. But Gareth's fate was not Genevieve's fault, though she seemed to regard it as such. She hadn't pushed her brother into the water. He'd been hopelessly curious, like all young children, and then... Poor Gareth. Poor Genevieve, too. Letitia exhaled. Her voice sounded strange and brittle in the stillness of the night, not entirely her own. She turned over in her bed, her eyelids screwed tightly shut as she attempted to get comfortable. Alas, it did not work. Still sleep did not come. The images of Gareth did not fade. Letitia mightn't have met the young boy, but she could feel his absence in Hashen Manor. Gareth's memory haunted the halls of the house and the hearts of all those who had loved and cared for him. Arthur Langley, for all Genevieve said he did not care, must have loved his son to distraction. If he had not, he would not have sounded so torn when he had told Letitia about him. He had looked upon the young boy's picture with such intense wistfulness it had pained Letitia merely to behold. Was that why Arthur had constructed a relationship with Abigail? Perhaps it had been his attempt, misguided though it was, to sire another little boy, a replacement for the son he had lost. Had Arthur acted not out of lust, but from bereaved sorrow? There was one more question which plagued Letitia's mind as a second ticked by like syrup. Had Arthur acted at all? Was this all a misunderstanding, or... Letitia shivered beneath her covers. The cold weather was closing in, and she could feel a cool breeze against her bare cheek. It almost felt like fingertips were caressing her face. Letitia's head was beginning to ache. She had never wanted to sleep more desperately than she did now, but it refused to come. She could not stop thinking of the marshes. They were wild and untamed, their lakes so very deep they could hide any number of unpleasant things. Squirming eels and muddied ferns, the corpses of little boys. Horrible monsters. With every passing second, the caresses of the wind and the ivy against the glass panes sounded more and more like tapping fingers, rasping breaths, and airy laughter. The news of Abigail's departure did little to still the continued flow of time. October came to a close and November began, heralding in winds cold enough to knife through clothes. Letitia couldn't remember the winter ever being this biting back in London. Perhaps it was because the countryside was so sparse. There were no houses to break the breeze, just a vast, endless expanse of dull puddles and scraggly trees. The weekly journeys Letitia made to and from St. Osbert's Church, Genevieve and Miss Ree in tow, began to feel like exercises of endurance. The weak wind crept in through the carriage's windows, and the cowl, which Letitia wound about her shoulders, did little to fend off the weather. Sitting in the church, meanwhile, was just as miserable. The old building was poorly insulated, with loose tiles and aged weather walls. The hard wooden pews sucked all the heat from Letitia's thighs, and by the time the sermon was over, she felt half frozen. Arthur Langley, for his part, remained in his study. Nothing could have torn him away from his books, neither hellfire nor hurricane. The days became weeks, but Letitia saw neither hide nor hair of her employer. He was so reclusive, she almost forgot that he existed. Whenever Arthur had news to relay to Letitia, which was rare, he asked Miss Ree to do it in his stead. It was she who gave Letitia her monthly allowance, and it was she who appraised Genevieve's progress, which was, she remarked with pursed lips, not entirely unsatisfactory. It wasn't until 2 months after their last meeting, in fact, near the end of November, that Letitia saw Arthur Langley again. He summoned her to his study after Genevieve's lessons had concluded for the day, or rather, Miss Reed did in his stead. "Miss Reed, one moment, please." Miss Reed called out to Letitia while she was in the process of polishing one of the ornate lamps in the schoolroom. Letitia, who hadn't expected any company, jumped at the sound of Miss Reed's authoritarian tones. Blushing fiercely. She always felt small and silly when Miss Reed addressed her. She set her cloth to one side and turned. "Yes, miss? What is it?" "The master wishes to see you. Please report to his study at once." "Oh?" Letitia blinked. As always, dozens of nightmare scenarios began to flicker through her head, each one more worrying than the other. "Is there anything particular he wishes to tell me about?" "Well, how should I know?" Miss Ree's response was sharp and cutting. Her expression was displeased, and her nose held high in the air like the protruding beak of a nighthawk. "The master's business is his own. You'll find out what he wants soon enough when you go and see him." Oh, yes. I suppose I will." "Honestly." Miss Reed rolled her eyes. "I'm surprised you can keep Miss Langley in check. You're barely any older than she is, and you have absolutely no gumption. Girls today are all so silly and weak-willed." Letitia's blush deepened at this. Though she didn't much like Miss Reed. She supposed the housekeeper was right. She always assumed the worst, in almost every scenario, and then her nerves overwhelmed her. It wasn't a becoming trait for a woman, doubly so a governess. Perhaps she'd read one too many books in her time. Her mother had often scolded her for being too fanciful. "Now you really should be on your way. You shouldn't keep the master waiting." Right." Letitia was ready to depart. It was soon intercepted by Miss Reed's voice. "Oh, and Miss Reed, one more thing. About the state of the schoolroom." Miss Reed's critical gaze swept across the wood-panelled room. The floor was scuffed with age, but Letitia made a point of sweeping and polishing the boards after every lesson, and the books on the shelf were arranged in alphabetical order, not a spine out of place. It was evident that Miss Reed had wanted to scold Letitia for yet another objectionable habit, but finding nothing amiss, she could only scowl and say, "Please continue to keep everything neat and orderly. A tidy room is a tidy mind, and Miss Langley needs all the help she can get." Coming from Miss Reed, this almost sounded like a compliment. Letitia did not smile. She was afraid Miss Reed would tell her to wipe that smirk off her face. But she dropped a neat curtsy and said, "I will, miss. I shall continue to do my best." That being said, Letitia departed from the schoolroom and set off for Arthur Langley's study. Upon arriving at her destination, Letitia paused to adjust her hair and her skirts. She brushed down the fabric of her long, sensual skirt, hoping to look as presentable as possible, and forced herself to smile. Letitia's mother had always told her it was important to make a good first impression. Not that it was Letitia's first time meeting Arthur. Then again, it had been so very long since last they'd spoken, it almost felt like a first meeting. Letitia brushed a few loose strands of hair behind her ear and shifted, swallowing her knuckles, hovering before the wooden door. She could not entirely rule out the possibility that Arthur meant to dismiss her, but that seemed unlikely. Even Miss Rees seemed to think her lessons were doing Genevieve some good. Why, then, had he summoned her? Perhaps he wished to talk about her wages. Letitia tensed. If she continued to dither, she would never know. She was a grown woman. It was high time she stopped being so needlessly nervous about everything. "Excuse me, sir?" Letitia rapped upon the door with more force than perhaps was necessary. "Miss Rees said you wished to see me." "Ah, yes." Letitia heard Arthur's clear, well-cut vowels emitting from within his study. There was the creak of a chair, then the clearing of a throat. "Please do come in. I've been waiting for you." Letitia pressed her hand upon her chest, hoping to still her pounding heart, before she took the doorknob between her fingers and twisted it. The lock clicked, the door swung back, and Letitia was admitted into the depths of Arthur's study. It looked just the same as it had during Letitia's last two visits, only today the fireplace was stoked. A warm blaze burned within the hearth, filling the room with the scent of wood smoke. As it was almost December, the sun set a little after 6 o'clock. While the sun had yet to sink that day, the morning light was waning. The fire at least offered a bit of cheer to an otherwise drab room, the merry sound of crackling fire masking Letitia's hammering heart. Arthur, too, looked just as he always had. His fair hair was neat, as was the starched collar of his white shirt. He was impeccably put together, every inch a gentleman, though the wrinkles about his blue eyes revealed his age. Arthur smiled when he saw Letitia, wary though he seemed, and beckoned her to come even closer. "It will be hard to converse with you from all the way across the room, you know." "Oh, yes, of course." Letitia shut the door behind her, then took a few neat steps into the room. The eyes of the taxidermy magpies perched within their glass dome seemed to follow her. The fire reflected against the polished glass of the magpie's case, which made the bird's lifeless pupils look oddly animated. There was something sinister about those birds. Letitia had never much liked them. "Ah, that's better. Now I can see your face." Arthur smiled at Letitia. His expression was serene enough, but Letitia hung back, unsure of just how trustworthy he truly was. Arthur seemed to sense this, however, for laughingly he said, "You don't need to be afraid of me, you know. I don't bite." "Oh, Letitia looked down at her feet, abashed. "I'm not afraid, not really." "Not really?" Though Letitia could not see Arthur's face, given her downcast gaze, she could imagine he was raising his eyebrows. "Does that mean part of you is somewhat perturbed? I hope that daughter of mine hasn't been spreading stories about me." "Oh, no. Genevieve doesn't often talk about you." "Doesn't she?" Arthur didn't look particularly convinced, which was perhaps to be expected. Letitia had always been a poor liar. "That is in part why I wish to speak with you. It has been a while since I last talked, and I was wondering how my Jenny is getting along. She hasn't been too much of a bother, has she?" "Oh, no," Letitia said once more, when immediately inwardly wincing at the number of times she explained, "Oh." Perhaps she thought wryly she ought to start keeping a tally. Genevieve has been a lovely pupil. She can be a bit spirited from time to time, it is true, but she knows when to sit down and pay attention. I'm becoming quite fond of her." Well, that is good news. Arthur's eyes crinkled. He seemed genuinely pleased by this report, in a way Letitia could not imagine being counterfeited. Not for the first time. Letitia was struck by the impression that Arthur Langley really did love his daughter, his Jenny, as he termed her. Why, then, did he shut himself away in his study, and why did he never see her? Please, sir. Letitia looked at Arthur Langley anxiously. If you are curious about Genevieve's welfare, why do you not ask after her directly? I'm sure she would like it if you showed some interest in her affairs. Are you now? Arthur shook his head. I appreciate your optimism, but I fear I cannot be so certain myself. I beg your pardon, sir? Jenny might be amicable enough when she is with you, but I've long suspected she does not hold me in high regard. Perhaps that is true, but nothing will change if you don't try. Letitia countered, yet soon found herself surprised by her own forcefulness. Where had all the fire come from? Perhaps she was braver than she thought. It was all, Letitia thought, because she was arguing on Genevieve's behalf. The young mistress had defended her honour from Beesting's prying villagers, and now she felt obliged to do the same. She could hardly call herself Genevieve's friend if she did not, at least, put forth a bit of effort. Arthur, for his part, looked only mildly amused by Genevieve's outburst. His gentle smile did not waver, and his voice was soft when next he spoke. Now that is curious. I thought you said Jenny did not talk about me. She doesn't, not really. And how do you know that she does not care for me? That was, well, Letitia faltered. Arthur had seen through her lies instantaneously with the ease of drawing aside a curtain. His sharp blue eyes really did seem to see everything. It was evident that he did not call himself a scholar for nothing. All right, Letitia relented. Genevieve does speak of you on occasions, but it's rare that she has anything positive to say. Ah, yes, I did suspect as much. She believes that you avoid her. I think she might like it if you would deign to speak to her every once in a while. I am not so sure about that. I did try to reach out to her after Sylvie passed, but the results were unpleasant. I'd rather not go through that again. Letitia was unsure what this unpleasantness entailed exactly, but after witnessing Genevieve at her worst, she could imagine. Insults, jeers, and broken crockery. And with that, I think we will finish for the day. I know it's a shorter one, but given how busy I am this week, and how worn I'm feeling, I do believe that'll be enough for today. We must find someone. Thank you for showing up, everyone, by the way. I do appreciate that, but we must find someone to raid. I am immensely tempted to raid a certain someone. For those in the know, I am saying that we should raid Dear Tushy Bean. She is on the last day of her subathon. As she's playing The Wolf Among Us. I would appreciate if anyone was able to support her subathon. This is just my little attempt to boost her subathon goals just a little bit, you know? We don't have a raid catchphrase, but just say hi, you know? Be nice. She's a silly bean. She's a cute model. You'll love it. Thank you all for showing up today, chat. I did appreciate it immensely. But as I say, this is going to be a very busy week.